Grandma, I love you. Come visit again soon. Remembering my granddaughter's sweet words, I decided to call my son and daughter-in-law's house. However, when Sebastian answered, I could hear Isabella yelling angrily in the background. I told you, it's annoying. Tell that old hag not to come. I don't care about your parents. Tell her to send money instead of visiting, money. While it's common for mothers-in-law to feel avoided, this outburst seemed particularly concerning. I was at a loss, increasingly puzzled about what could be going on. Help Papa first, not me, little Ava cried out in a shaky voice when I managed to get her on the phone. Despite trembling, she was still desperately worried about Sebastian. I marveled at the immense courage and love contained in her small body. Calm down, I need to stay calm. I must help Ava and Sebastian. I thought, encouraging myself to be strong for them. I had to respond to Ava's plea. I would find a way to save them, no matter what. The fate of my two precious loved ones rested on my shoulders. My name is Patricia and I'm 64 years old, currently living alone in an apartment. I worked at a company until age 60 while single-handedly raising my son Sebastian. When he went off to college, he became independent. These days, I work part-time 3 days a week and enjoy a leisurely life. About 7 years ago, Sebastian excitedly shared that he was getting married to a beautiful woman 9 years his junior. At 30, that meant his bride-to-be was a 21-year-old young lady named Isabella. They had met through a mutual acquaintance and really hit it off. My parents also divorced when I was young, so I was raised by my mom and older sister, just the three of us. That's why I understand Sebastian cherishing his mother so much, Isabella told me with a radiant smile. Of course, I was thrilled about the marriage and gave the couple my full blessing. Actually, Isabella is already pregnant, the beaming young couple shyly revealed, much to my surprise. Soon after, my adorable granddaughter Ava was born. Sebastian and Isabella lived just a 20-minute drive away. When Ava was little, I frequently babysat, enjoying blissful days filled with even more happiness. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine the shocking events that would abruptly bring an end to my content life. As soon as Ava started elementary school, contact from them completely ceased. They must be busy. Perhaps Isabella went back to work, I reasoned, trying to console my loneliness. No news is good news, as the saying goes. If they didn't need to rely on me, I figured that was a positive thing. Since I lived closer than Isabella's parents, I assumed they would still call on me if needed. In fact, up until last year, I was invited over many times to watch Ava. I can still picture her waving goodbye until I was out of sight, always saying, "Grandma, I love you. Come again soon." I increasingly longed to see her. However, even as a grandmother, I knew it wouldn't be right to visit without her parents' permission. But surely, I thought, they would at least let me see Ava during her summer and winter breaks. I decided to patiently wait for them to reach out. Summer break arrived, proving my assumption wrong. Far from inviting me over, they didn't even call once. Well then, maybe I should go visit them. I thought one evening, deciding to call Sebastian. I wanted to ask about their availability, knowing it would be rude to show up unannounced. My plan was to visit for a few hours during the day on a weekend that worked for them. I would be mindful not to overstay my welcome. As the phone rang, I contemplated what gift to bring. Surprisingly, Sebastian's response was not what I expected. Isabella says it would be a bother. She's tired and doesn't feel up to having company. I'm sorry, but could we please skip the visits this year, he told me. After my initial shock subsided, realization slowly sank in. Seeing me was a burden for Isabella. It's easy to forget, but from Isabella's perspective, I'm her mother-in-law. I had assumed we got along as friends, but perhaps she had actually been making an effort for my sake. If she's tired, I could help out with some housework at least. But would my coming be more trouble than it's worth? I asked hesitantly. I heard Sebastian move the phone away from his mouth, likely to consult Isabella. Holding my breath, I listened closely. Then I faintly made out Isabella's voice, with an irritated tone I'd never heard before. I told you, it's annoying. Tell that old hag not to come. I don't care about your parents. Tell her to send money instead of visiting, money. Her words were muffled, but that's what I gathered. Can you imagine my shock? I was so stunned I couldn't even speak. In the silence, Sebastian's deeply apologetic voice came through. I'm sorry, I appreciate the thought, but she really doesn't want anyone in the house. She recently started a part-time job and I think it's wearing her out and making her irritable. I just sat there, dazed. I had no idea I was disliked to this extent. I vaguely recall mumbling, "I see," in response to Sebastian before hanging up, dejected. After ending the call, I regretted not asking to at least speak with Ava. Truthfully, more than wanting to visit, I simply longed to see Sebastian and Ava's faces. For Isabella, having her mother-in-law intrude on their family home must be stressful. Back when I was still married to my ex-husband, I remember feeling quite tense on the days my mother-in-law would visit. I could easily sympathize with Isabella's aversion. If things continue like this and her dislike of me grows, there may come a day when I'm not allowed to see my granddaughter even if I do visit. I reflected deeply on the situation. At the same time, I now understood that Isabella had indeed started working. Isabella had gotten married to Sebastian and become a housewife shortly after entering the workforce. Her previous job was in an office, if I recall correctly. A part-time job, possibly involving standing for long hours, may be a very different kind of exhaustion. As Sebastian said, both physically and mentally worn out, she may be less receptive to many things. I quickly sent Sebastian an apology message. "I'm sorry about earlier. Please tell Isabella the first apologize to her as well. It's a huge imposition to have someone over. I'm reflecting on my behavior. I just wanted to see Ava's cheerful face, so please send me a photo sometime. If you're able to come home for a visit anytime soon, please let me know." I waited for a reply, praying he would respond. To my surprise, the phone rang much sooner than anticipated. The caller ID showed Sebastian's number, so I promptly answered. However, the voice on the other line wasn't Sebastian's, but Isabella's. "Hello. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness," she said, her voice feeble, completely different from the shrill yelling I had overheard earlier. She sounded utterly exhausted. For a moment I wavered on which to believe, but realized my course of action would be the same either way. Regardless of her true feelings, the fact that she's making an effort to get along is a positive thing, I decided. With that in mind, I made sure to keep my tone bright. "Hi Isabella, it's been a while. I heard you started a job. You must be working so hard. It's tough, huh? I'm sorry for saying I would visit when you're dealing with so much." Isabella let out an exaggerated sigh. I could even hear her sniffle, as if she might be crying. If her tears were genuine, she must be in a very emotionally volatile state. "Yes, I'm just completely wiped out. I know it's summer break, but I'm so sorry, this time it's a bit." Isabella's voice was filled with sorrow. I started to wonder if her emotions were genuinely in turmoil. Gradually, my concern began to outweigh my suspicion. Various potential causes of her distress crossed my mind: hormonal imbalances, stress. Honestly, I'd much prefer if she simply disliked me as a mother-in-law. Of course, no problem at all. I'm sorry for making an unreasonable request. Don't worry about it one bit. More importantly, are you okay? Are you getting enough rest? I spoke softly, taking great care not to strike a nerve. Isabella fell silent for a short while. Heart pounding, I waited for her response for several long seconds. Eventually, her voice came through the receiver, sounding slightly more upbeat. "I'm all right. Talk to you later then." After a brief goodbye, she hung up. I couldn't help but sigh. The atmosphere wasn't conducive to asking to see my granddaughter. Isabella's condition worried me, but I was also concerned about how Sebastian seemed to be at her beck and call. I wondered if this was typical of young couples these days, especially young women, but couldn't come up with an answer. Left with a lingering sense of unease, I reluctantly decided to give up. About 30 minutes after the call ended, I received a message from Sebastian. "Can we meet during my lunch break tomorrow?" it read. Since I had the next day off, I promptly replied okay. The following day, Sebastian and I arranged to meet for lunch at a restaurant near his workplace. When I saw Sebastian for the first time in a while, he looked exhausted, his words lacking energy. "Isabella's been acting strange lately. She goes out every night and comes home drunk. She refuses to let Ava stay with you or her parents even though she's hungover in bed. To be honest, I'm at a loss." Sebastian took a key out of his pocket and handed it to me. It seemed to be a spare key to their house. "Just in case, I'm giving this to you. If I get sick or something and can't move, would it be alright to call you?" I accepted the key, trying to suppress my unease. For Sebastian to make such a request, something serious must be going on. Even after returning home, I was too worried to sit still. After agonizing for 3 whole days, I sent Sebastian a message. I wanted to talk to him directly again and hear more details about his troubles. Are you available to talk on the phone right now? He should be home at this hour. Normally, he would promptly send some kind of reply. However, no matter how long I waited, no response came. As midnight approached and I started considering visiting their house, a reply finally arrived. Busy. Not possible for a while. The message was far too curt. My sense of foreboding persisted. The next day, despite worrying I might be overstepping, I decided to call Sebastian's workplace. To my shock, they informed me that Sebastian hadn't come to work for the past 2 days due to poor health. Indeed, he had looked unwell when we met 4 days prior. If his condition had worsened since then, it would make sense. But in that case, wouldn't he have responded to my message with sick rather than busy? My unease had escalated into blaring emergency alarms in my head. I rushed over to Sebastian and Isabella's house. I rang the doorbell but no one answered. Using the spare key to enter, I was baffled to find several heavy stones piled up in the kitchen. They were shaped like curling stones and looked to weigh about 20 pounds each. As I tilted my head in confusion, wondering why such objects were there, I heard a noise. Looking around, I spotted Ava outside on the balcony. I hurriedly opened the window and was stunned. Ava was chained up. The crude metal chain, though thin, looked sturdy and not easily removed. It was cold outside. I quickly took off my coat and wrapped it snugly around Ava. She was shivering, perhaps from the cold. Still, when she looked up at me, she cried out as if screaming, "Help Papa first, not me." I was bewildered. Hugging Ava close, I listened to more of her story. Mama locked Papa under the opening part of the kitchen floor. Under the round heavy things. "Please, hurry and save him." I gasped at the unimaginable tale. Following Ava's plea, I moved the stones aside to reveal a floor storage hatch. When I nervously opened it, I found Sebastian lying at the bottom of the dark, cramped storage space. I couldn't help but scream. "Sebastian!" There was no response. When I desperately reached out to touch him, his body was warm, the only sign he was alive. I urgently tried to pull him out, but Sebastian's unconscious body was too heavy to lift. I was on the verge of panic. Just then, I heard the sound of a car. I held my breath, thinking it might be bad if Isabella returned and saw this situation. If it were just Isabella alone, that would be one thing, but if she had a male companion with her, the odds would be stacked against me. I frantically ran to the front door and locked the chain. It seemed the car didn't belong to Isabella, as there was no sign of anyone's presence. On the contrary, the physical movement had helped clear my head. I told myself, "Calm down, I need to stay calm. I must help Ava and Sebastian." I pulled out my smartphone and dialed 911 in a daze. "My son collapsed under the floor and isn't responding. And my granddaughter is chained up, I can't get her free. She says her mama did it and my son's wife is out. Please help before she comes back. I explained the situation and location in response to the dispatcher's questions. The person on the other end of the line sounded tense as they listened to my plea. They assured me help would arrive quickly, but I repeatedly begged them to hurry. I had no idea when Isabella had left or where she was. I tried asking Ava, but she just cried, "I don't know." I pulled the chain to its limit, somehow managing to bring her inside. I wrapped Ava in a blanket I brought from the bedroom and held her tightly. "It's okay, Grandma will definitely save you. I'll protect you no matter what." I then returned to my motionless son. His chapped lips concerned me, but I had no way to give him a drink at the moment. He was breathing. I couldn't understand why he wouldn't open his eyes. As I prayed for the police and ambulance to arrive soon, I suddenly heard the sound of rattling at the front door. I leapt up in surprise. I hadn't noticed the sound of a car, but Isabella had returned. I must not have heard it in my frenzied state. Trembling, I went back to Ava and we held each other tightly. Ava was even more terrified than I was, sobbing and sniffling. The way she seemed to be holding back from making noise appeared to be further proof of how badly scared she was. "Ha! What the heck is this?" Isabella shouted as she forcefully tried to open the door several times. It sounded like she was kicking it too. She must have seen my shoes through the gap left by the chain, because she raised her voice even louder. "You've got to be kidding me, is that you, old hag? You had a key." Isabella yanked on the door over and over, making a racket. I thought the chain might break. Though my face was ashen, I steeled myself to fight if needed. Quietly leaving Ava's side, I headed to the kitchen. Searching for something to use as a weapon, I grabbed a frying pan. If worst came to worst, I had to at least protect Ava with this. I approached the entryway and braced myself. At that moment, I heard the sound of police cars in the distance. The noise was getting closer and closer. They must have come in response to my call. Isabella stopped rattling the door and froze. I raised my voice, "Here. Over here. Help us." With that, Isabella hastily let go of the doorknob and fled. As I collapsed to the floor, the doorbell rang. I let out a small scream, but then a man's voice resounded from outside. "Excuse me, is everything all right? We're from the Central Police Department, responding to a call." Crying, I practically crawled to the front door, undid the chain, and let them in. I quickly explained the situation to the police. Ava and Sebastian were safely rescued and taken to the hospital by ambulance. I accompanied them, but even after arriving at the hospital, I couldn't relax right away. Fortunately, Ava's life wasn't in danger. However, she was extremely thin, visibly showing signs of malnutrition. Test results indicated she was slightly dehydrated but generally okay. I was immensely relieved that Ava didn't have a fever. As for her weight loss, it seemed she would be able to recover by eating nutritious meals going forward. The real issue was Sebastian. When we first arrived at the hospital, he remained unconscious as if he had fainted. No matter how much I shook him or called his name, there was no response. I kept crying out for Sebastian until a nurse pulled me away. "Sebastian! Sebastian! Please, wake up! Papa!" Ava was sobbing too. I held her tightly, continuously praying for Sebastian's safety. While waiting for an update on his condition, I gradually pieced together the story from Ava. Mama locked Papa in there, and when I told her to stop, she got really mad and put me outside. She said she'd get even angrier if I made noise out there, so I tried my best not to cry, Ava told me in a small voice, clinging to me. I can't imagine how terrified she must have been, witnessing her father suffering like that. Yet the fact that she bravely spoke up and told Isabella to stop made me both proud and heartened. "You must have been so cold and scared. Is that when she chained you up too?" I recalled the chain that had bound Ava. That cold metal against her bare skin. The poor thing. But how was a chain so conveniently available? Yes. But even before, when Papa wasn't around, Mama would sometimes chain me up. She'd say I was a nuisance and to stop scurrying around. It's been happening since I was littler than I am now. I shuddered. So even back when I was visiting and helping out, Ava was being chained up like that without my knowledge. I almost asked why she never told me, but I swallowed those words. It would be cruel to say such a thing to a small child. Since it was something her mother did to her at home, it wouldn't have been easy for Ava to seek help. Especially if it had been going on since before she turned 7, she may not have fully grasped how abnormal it was. I should have noticed. Along with intense regret, my anger towards Isabella flared anew. I wondered just how much Sebastian knew about all this. I decided to ask Ava, did Papa know about the chains? She shook her head. No words followed. I embraced Ava and waited patiently. Eventually, with tears welling up in her eyes, she answered, "Mama said she'd get way madder if I told Papa or Grandma, so I always kept it a secret. Mama never does mean things to me when Papa or Grandma are around. When Grandma visits, Mama acts the nicest, so I liked Mama during those times." Despite enduring such treatment, Ava hadn't given up on Isabella as her mother. This time, I couldn't hold back my own tears. Ava cried with me. The time spent waiting for Sebastian's treatment to finish felt excruciatingly long, more drawn out than it probably was in reality. We later learned that Sebastian had been shoved into that cramped underfloor space for about 2 days without food or water. Luckily, the duct tape had been hastily applied rather than creating an airtight seal, so his breathing wasn't impaired. Finally, the news we had been desperately waiting for arrived. Sebastian had regained consciousness after receiving 4 fluids. Immensely relieved, Ava and I rushed to his side. Seeing Ava, a smile spread across Sebastian's face. We all rejoiced in each other's safety. The next day, Sebastian revealed the details of what Isabella had done. She ordered him to clean under the floor and shut the hatch once he was down there. Sebastian had frantically tried to get out but couldn't get the hatch to budge. Mama put big round heavy stones on top and sat on them. Ava, who had regained her energy, testified. The police officers listened to their accounts with solemn expressions. Isabella's behavior changed drastically after Ava started elementary school. But thinking back, there may have been signs even before that, Sebastian murmured sadly, his gaze fixed on the ceiling with an anxious, vacant look. After the police left, I was able to hear more details. There were times when Ava was younger that Isabella would go out with friends and come home late. The day after those nights, Ava would be oddly quiet. I just assumed she was being considerate in her own way, seeing her mother hungover and unwell. But maybe during those times too, Isabella was being harsh with Ava when I wasn't looking, Sebastian sighed. Since his wife was much younger than him, he had figured it was normal for a young woman to occasionally overdo it when out drinking with friends. Apparently, Isabella had even shown him photos taken with her girlfriends as proof that she wasn't up to anything suspicious. I thought since she was presumably working hard at home during the day, taking care of chores and Ava, going out was a good way for her to blow off steam. If only I had paid closer attention to how Ava was doing. Sebastian lowered his gaze sadly. Despite the danger he himself had faced, his only concern was for Ava. I felt a glimmer of pride at what a kind father he had become. But for Isabella, perhaps that very kindness made her feel even more entitled to get her way. Now that Ava and Sebastian had recovered, Isabella's misdeeds were coming to light. I comforted the two of them as best I could and told them to come stay at my place for a while after being discharged. I figured there was no need for them to return to a home filled with painful memories, especially since the police would be investigating there. They nodded and expressed their gratitude. Of course, the police had begun searching for Isabella on suspicion of unlawful confinement. They seemed to start by checking the area around the house, but she wasn't found right away. While keeping an eye on Sebastian and Ava, I was also questioned by the police. First, please tell us about the situation when you found your granddaughter and son. Also, do you have any idea where your daughter-in-law might have gone? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Sebastian looked exhausted, and Ava still seemed emotionally scarred. I was filled with resentment towards Isabella, but I needed to maintain my composure. Places Isabella might go. Well, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe. I shared my hunches with the police. I had no way of knowing the full scope of where Isabella might flee, but there was one possibility that came to mind. After speaking with the police, I sent a message to the person I suspected Isabella might turn to. Let's see, I'll write, Isabella has done terrible things to her husband and daughter. She's currently on the run. Thankfully, the two of them are safe, but they were hospitalized, so the police are involved. If you see Isabella, please contact me or the police. How's that? My message was met with a flurry of reactions. Most were shocked or pale-faced stickers. There was also a determined, got it, from a dog sticker. Since they were all young women, their responses on the messaging app were lively. However, this hunch was my only lead. If Isabella had gone to someone I didn't know, there would be no way to find her. I waited for news, practically praying. Then, as early as the next day, Isabella was arrested. Apparently, after fleeing, she had shown up at one of her friends' homes. It was exactly the outcome I had hoped for. I secretly rejoiced, thinking perhaps our daily good deeds had paid off. According to Isabella's friend, Isabella had told her, "I came to hang out. Let me crash here. I got in a fight with my husband. His mother was harassing me. But Sebastian didn't stand up for me." The friend said that if my message hadn't come first, she probably would have believed Isabella's story. I'm so glad I sent that message. We got lucky that she went to the home of someone I happened to know, I explained. The people I had messaged about the incident were Isabella's close friends. Let me reveal how I knew their contact information. You see, I'm quite skilled at socializing. At the wedding, I casually approached Isabella's friends and exchanged contact details. While Isabella was too caught up in the excitement to notice, I became acquainted with her friends. Now, I'm connected with several of them on social media and we get along well. Either Isabella had no idea, or she knew but didn't care. Being able to spread the word ahead of time turned out to be the decisive factor. The warning quickly circulated among Isabella's friends. Apparently, they were quick to believe my story because they all harbored a faint sense that Isabella might be capable of something like that. Neither Sebastian nor I had any inkling, but it seems Isabella had always had a terribly selfish and frightening side to her. According to reports, Isabella was arrested while hurling obscenities and complaints. While pleased that her swift arrest was made possible, I felt a bit dejected that both Sebastian and I had been such poor judges of character. In any case, it was over. More than joyful, I felt a sense of relief. A few months later, as the investigation into Isabella progressed, a shocking truth came to light. Ava wasn't actually Sebastian's daughter. In fact, even the identity of her biological father was unknown. Before marrying Sebastian, Isabella had apparently led a wild lifestyle. She would go out late every night and enjoy one-night stands. When she discovered she was pregnant, she had been involved with too many men to count on one hand. In other words, she had multiple partners besides Sebastian. Out of them, Sebastian was chosen because he made the most money. When I told him I was pregnant with his child, he was overjoyed. I thought he was a chump and that I could do whatever I wanted, so I went ahead and married him, Isabella confessed. Sebastian was utterly devastated upon learning this. Of course, I was outraged. How awful, unforgivable. Along with my anger towards Isabella, I was also furious with my past self for blindly celebrating their marriage. My main worry was Ava. How could we possibly tell a mere 7-year-old that Sebastian wasn't her father? After learning the truth, Sebastian and I agonized over what and how to convey this to Ava. Can such a young child handle it? I wasn't inclined to easily reveal the truth. Since it was certain to be painful for Ava, I wanted to proceed with caution. However, Sebastian was torn. If he wasn't her parent, that meant she had another real father out there. He couldn't help but wonder if it was right to keep that a secret. Someday she might want to know the truth, he said. After several days of discussion, we decided not to tell her for the time being. Even if we were to tell her eventually, there had to be a proper way to do so. We couldn't make a decision without deeper consideration. Additionally, Isabella's motive for committing such a heinous act came to light. Shockingly, Isabella had become hooked on strip clubs and was pouring money into them. Urged by her favorite dancer to spend even more, Isabella finally dipped into Sebastian's bank account. Fearing he would find out, she took preemptive action to silence him by locking him in the underfloor storage. Crying, Isabella confessed, "I wanted to give the dancer more money. I thought it would be fine, even convenient, if my husband never came back. After all, with the insurance money, I could frequent the club even more." Moreover, when I heard she still longed to see the man, I was at a loss for words. From the beginning, it had been a marriage of convenience. It was crystal clear there had never been any love. However, I couldn't tell if Isabella's utter lack of morality was entirely her own doing or if the man she met also played a role. Listening to Isabella's statements, there were others besides me who were astonished, Isabella's mother and sister. Initially, out of familial affection, Isabella's family had intended to welcome her back once she had paid her debt to society. Yet, after hearing Isabella's testimony, they made an abrupt about-face and declared they would cut all ties. Eventually, Isabella, having been duly sentenced, was sent to prison. With even her family severing their relationship, no one was left to bring her care packages. From now on, she would experience a life of utter solitude. Now, learning that Ava wasn't his biological daughter, I had a new worry, that Sebastian might come to dislike Ava. I, too, was deeply shocked. Learning she wasn't my real granddaughter was incredibly saddening. Even so, my mind was filled with happy memories of adorable Ava. I waited with bated breath for Sebastian's response. The fact remains that I raised Ava for 7 years. While trapped, more than fearing I might never wake up again, I was terrified of not being able to protect Ava. "I intend to continue raising Ava as my precious daughter," Sebastian declared in a quiet but resolute tone. I breathed a sigh of relief. 10 years have passed since that incident. In the aftermath, Sebastian, Ava, and I began living together, so it's been a decade of the three of us under one roof. Looking back, the time has flown by in the blink of an eye. Rather than 10 years, it feels more like it happened just 2 or 3 years ago. As adults, Sebastian and I haven't changed much. Only Ava's growth makes me feel the passage of time. Both physically and emotionally scarred by Isabella, the two of them gradually recovered as they spent their days eating my lovingly prepared meals. Sebastian says he has no desire to remarry after what happened. Well, that's to be expected. Instead, he threw himself into his work and earned a promotion. Thanks to that, even I, living with them, can enjoy a comfortable life. Except for his luck with women, he really is a wonderful son. Ava is now a 17-year-old high school student. The other day, a beautifully grown Ava brought home her first boyfriend. Seeing the couple studying together was heartwarming. Is she really into such a scrawny, unreliable-looking guy? Sebastian grumbled. But that slender, slightly timid, and very serious young man is the spitting image of Sebastian in his youth. Perhaps it goes to show that even without a blood connection, Ava is undoubtedly Sebastian's daughter. Our family of 3 continues to lead a happy life. Together with Sebastian and Ava, I look forward to many more joyful days ahead.